for the record, Jeff Bradley from Wolfboro. I am here as the prime sponsor of Senate Bill 281 relative to the siting of large-scale wind turbines. Over the last several years, I think we have seen, starting in Senator Odell's district in New Hampshire, several wind turbine developments. One in Senator Woodburn's area, another one in Senator Odell's area, and then probably the most visible one in the Plymouth area that you can see quite readily from Route 93. You will hear this morning from impacted New Hampshire residents that are in the proximity of these industrial-sized wind developments. Obviously, a wind turbine has to be sited where the wind blows, and that's often in some of our most remote, rural, beautiful areas of the state on ridge lines and in people's backyards as they've bought property to try to get away from some of the things that are more commonplace in southern New Hampshire and elsewhere. You know, I tell this story quite a bit. As you all know, I am a big hiker and travel up Route 93, it seems like all the time, to get to the Franconia Range and the Kinsmans and Cannon and the Twins. And, so I've seen the development of the wind turbines in the Plymouth area, and as you drive north on 93, I think that to a certain extent they're a novelty. You're several miles away, you watch them a little bit as you're driving, you have to pay attention, of course, to you're driving, and then you're gone. And it's a very different situation, in my view, having spent some time touring the towns in the newfound area this summer, what it means to be in close proximity to a wind development if you're a property owner. And it's very different than it is for the rest of us that might be just driving through an area, look at them, and continue on our way. If you are in close proximity to wind turbines, they have a visual impact. They are several hundred feet tall. They have flashing red lights at night. They create a shadow flicker that is incredibly distracting, that will even go through some blinds because of the red light that you have to have on the top of the wind tower because they're over 200 feet for aviation purposes. There's noise depending on which way the wind is blowing. They have a real and demonstrable impact, and they have an impact on people's lives and their property values. And I believe it's time that New Hampshire adopts some siting regulation or give more guidance to our site evaluation committee so that we can both enjoy the benefit of a renewable energy resource, but at the same time not diminish people's property values, not impact their lives with the noise and the shadow flicker and the visual impact, and try to create a win-win situation. So when I introduced Senate Bill 281, I took a stab at a number of criteria to try to bring some measured response to this issue. Height limits of 250 feet, spacing between the towers, noise restrictions, shadow flicker restrictions, decommissioning fire, and the like. As people looked at this bill, they came back to me with a number of suggestions, and I would submit for the record an amendment that I would hope the committee will consider. And I'm going to walk through the amendment because it dramatically changes the bill. And I have 25 copies here for the public. And I think it's been out for quite some time. in order to try to bring not only rationality to the system, but maybe a little bit more of a holistic approach to their siting as opposed to a strict height limit, a strict spacing limit, and, did I get copies to the committee? Okay, good, I'm sorry. I thought they were with Chris's copy. My apologies. So, let me just walk briefly through the, what the amendment seeks to do. Section 1 of the bill, the definitions stay the same. The amendment replaces section 2 of the bill, and if you're on the bill, it's on line 10 through line 25, and that Roman 2 would disappear with this amendment, and I would hope the committee will consider the amendment as opposed to the bill. Most importantly, right in the beginning, it says, in creating the rules to govern the siting of large wind energy systems, the site evaluation committee shall address but not be limited to the following. So it sets some overall criteria without the more stringent standards in my bill. It talks about visual impact within a range of 10 miles. 10 miles is I think a realistic visual impact range. When you drive up 93, you're 5 to 7 miles from the towers on Tenny Mountain, so that is a pretty realistic range. It talks about, in B, the cumulative impact on natural, scenic, recreational, cultural resources. And this is here to protect the landscape of New Hampshire and the values that not only we as property owners think are so important, but we as New Hampshire residents who cherish our ridgelines, our North Country, and the beautiful scenery that we have in our state. Setback requirements so that there would not be the impact that some of the applications that have been developed have had on property owners, talking about health and safety impacts, and then again the noise, the flicker, and the possibility of ice throw. I have heard the noise myself, I have seen the shadow flicker myself, and I will just tell you one other quick story. I had the opportunity to stay at the Mount Washington Observatory in October overnight, and while being about 40 miles away from the closest application, I could see one in Maine, one in northern New Hampshire, and one in Plymouth. And the red lights are mesmerizing. They are absolutely mesmerizing. And so if you are a neighbor, you think, oh, this has got to be crazy to think of shadow flicker as an issue. Having seen it from the summit of Mount Washington myself, I can just imagine if you are a neighbor within a mile or 2 or 3 or 4, what the shadow flicker does to people in terms of closing their windows, closing their blinds. That's not New Hampshire, and we should be able to develop what's called for in C, setback requirements that reduce that impact. D, scientifically based standards for both sound pressure and independent monitoring. Again, once you've heard the noise, it's real. And if you're a neighbor in close proximity, it's real, and it just changes the way that you live your life. E, sort of natural resource impacts that I think we're all trying to be cognizant of in this state. Plants, animals, natural communities, migrating birds. I mean, I think we all know about the impact that wind turbines can have on bird and the death rate of birds. Fire protection, this has been a significant issue in the Tenny Mountain, the Plymouth wind plant, and there's litigation going on as a result of that. And then the site decommissioning, we want to make sure that when the useful life of these machines are over, that they're dismantled properly, and that our ridge lines are returned to a more suitable composition. And then lastly, and I think one of the really important measures of the bill is to try to use the best available mitigation measures to minimize the impact on property values. And I think you will hear today people that are living with the impact of these applications in their backyards and what they mean to them in their personal lives. And so, in a state that prides itself on being good neighbors, and as Robert Frost once said, good fences make good neighbors, in my view, good standards will make good neighbors, so that we can have the benefit of this renewable energy resource, but at the same time, not undermine, not impact on people's lives and their property values. So I commend this amendment to you, and I would just say the third part of the bill is another measure that is not covered by this amendment. Roman 3, going back to the bill on lines 27 and 28, it gives the Site Evaluation Committee specific authority to require a developer of a large wind energy system to provide a property value guarantee. And I will tell you, I had the chance to tour in some of the towns impacted by some of the potential developments in the newfound area. I believe it was either in Danbury or Alexandria. I had the opportunity to visit a beautiful farm up on a hill with views down toward the Monadnock Range, and it was a pretty humid July day when I was there, so you could just sort of see the Monadnocks in the distance, but I'm sure on a clear day, very visible, very beautiful, up on top of a hill. And there's a bit of a hill off to the couple's right, and actually a larger hill to the right, and a little bit smaller hill to the left, which would have been the east. And I was told that there could potentially be, under that application, 11 wind turbines of several hundred feet tall within about half a mile or less of this couple's property. I absolutely agree with them. It will have a dramatic impact on the value of this farm that they've owned forever and cherished. A farm that, if any of us were to drive on these back roads in that area, on that hilltop, you would say would have an impact. And so Roman numeral 3 is there specifically to ensure that our friends and neighbors who are potentially impacted by large-scale, several hundred feet wind turbines have some mechanism to ensure that the property value that they've established is maintained. And remember that these facilities are located in areas of the state where people have left from more urban areas of our state to go to specifically get away from this kind of thing. And so the balance that I'm trying to establish in this, I think, is significant and helpful. It will allow these industrial size applications to proceed, but in a way that mitigates their impact on the people that have to look at them. So I thank you for letting me sort of ramble on for a few minutes here.
You're welcome. Any questions of the committee? Senator Clark.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Senator Bradley. I wanted to ask you, I'm not quite sure I understand how a property value guarantee works. And if you would be able to elaborate on that a little bit, I would be appreciative.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Fuller Clark, for that question. Along with my good friend, Senator Forrester, who is the sponsor of Senate Bill 245, a series of bills that our committee has heard to try to create the standards necessary for the appropriate review at the Site Evaluation Committee process, so that we can have the energy resources that we need, and I'm certainly a proponent of that, but at the same time mitigate against some of the deleterious impacts of it. So what I propose in this legislation is specific authorization for the site evaluation committee through their rules process, if you will, to develop standards that would create a property value guarantee. It doesn't spell out in the legislation how it exactly would work, but it gives the authority to the site evaluation committee to require it.
Is that a mechanism that exists in any other state?
I am told, and there will be folks testifying from the Nature Conservancy and the Forest Society and a couple of other groups that helped me, Appalachian Mountain Club, helped me with this amendment that will testify as to these A through G is language that they've worked on in other states. So it's, it may not be exactly the same language, but it's not anything revolutionary.
Well, that language is not my concern. It's the language about a property value guarantee. And is that a mechanism that exists elsewhere that has been used?
The answer to that is, I don't know, but I think it's vitally important that we give the authorization to the site evaluation committee to ensure that, in particular, properties like the one I cited, and I can't remember if it was in Danbury or Alexandria, and I'm sure one of the witnesses this morning can better highlight exactly where it was. So that couple doesn't lose the value of their life's work, quite frankly.
Any other questions? Senator O'Donnell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Senator Bradley, good morning. So, is the unintended consequence here to end the development of wind power in the state of New Hampshire? If I read from a letter that Ed Chirian, who oversaw the development of Everdola's 12 turbines in Leominster, in two or three things, but section 2A, the bill proposes a limit maximum tip height of any wind turbine in New Hampshire of 250 feet. No commercial wind farm could be built in New Hampshire under this restriction.
And Senator, that's why I've substituted in section 2 for all of those specific standards, the language in the amendment that would give the site evaluation committee the authorization to be able to look at visual impacts, cumulative impacts, setback requirements, scientifically based standards on noise, other impacts, fire protection, site decommissioning, and property value. So that I've substituted this language for that section of the bill that talks about spacing and height restrictions. I think this is a better way to proceed.
So rather than the strict, rather than the strictness of the original bill as introduced, now we're basically turning it over to site evaluation committee with certain
Criteria. And again, I think there would be a lot of people that would be appreciative of 250 foot and 5,000 foot spacing, but I understand how this building works, and I recognize that there's a need to try to create a compromise that everybody can live with, and I think you will hear testimony today from at least some of the advocates of my bill that while this may not be everything they want, that this moves the ball forward in a way that doesn't preclude the development of wind in New Hampshire, but at the same time protects the resources, the visual resources that I think all of us as New Hampshire citizens expect to be protected, and the particular protections that property owners that are impacted are feeling from these developments.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you very much. I believe, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to go downstairs to testify on another bill, and I'll be back as soon as I have.
Very good. Thank you very much, Senator. Senator Forster?